I'll just start, and it's just, I'm Allison Deeb. I'm the facilitator for the Whippany River Watershed Action Committee. I've been here as a facilitator since December of 2019. I actually started, then we got hit with the pandemic in 2020, and I think we all know what happened during that year. And so now we're coming out. We're still as busy as ever, though. We've been accomplishing a lot of great things and doing a lot of great stuff. But I have been with the Whippany River Watershed for about 10 years, first as the mayoral appointment for the town of Morristown, and then worked as the administrator for a couple of years under Art Vespignani, and now was hired back to be the facilitator. So welcome to everybody tonight.
Okay, and I'll go on, then I'll try to orchestrate the timing. So my name's Larry Gindoff. Tonight I am the vice chairman, also the treasurer of the WERWAC, and I'll be running tonight's meeting. Our chairman, Siva Jornada, is not available tonight, so I'll be running the meeting, including trying to let someone in as I speak. But now I lost my place as I let the person in, but I'll be running tonight's meeting. Oh, that's what I'm going to say, that in my daytime job, I'm also the executive director of the Morris County Municipal Utilities Authority, sister agency to the Southeast MCMUA. I like to say we're the Southeast MCMUA, but we leave the S off, the savings. Usually doesn't go over that well, but regardless, we are sister agencies. We work a lot together, and it's great that we're working together on this. So with that stated, I'm going to try to go through my listing here and ask Richard J. Smith to introduce himself. And you are on mute, by the way, Richard.
Hey, thank you, Larry. So my name is RJ Smith. I'm from the Southeast Morris County MUA. I'm one of the engineering assistants over there. Happy to be here and happy to learn.
Okay, thanks. And next I'll have Jen O'Neill introduce herself.
Jennifer O'Neill. I'm the administrator for the WERWAC. I live in Boonton Township, and I'm in my 4th year as administrator for the organization.
And how about you, Don? Next, Don Kissel. You're on mute, Don.
Not hearing from Don. Don Kissel is actually on the board of the Southeast Morris County MUA, and he is a resident of Morristown.
And his technical expert is looking over his shoulder now, trying to rectify that, which we appreciate. In the meantime, Chris, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, Chris Vidal. I'm with the Morris County Municipal Utilities Authority, and I'm a resident of East Hanover.
Okay, I'm going to go Kathleen Hurahan next in the middle.
Hi, I'm Kathy Hurahan, and I am Larry Gindoff's significant other. I'm trying to feed my dog right now, and he's barking, so I apologize if you hear him barking. I'll mute myself again, but I am a resident of, there he goes. I'm a resident of Morris Township, so I'm very interested to hear about our drinking water.
Okay, next I'll select Dennis Dietrich to block.
Yep, Dennis Dietrich. I'm from Hanover Township. Actually, I'm chairman of the Hanover Township Sewer Authority. I'm on the Green Team, Environmental Commission, and I'm member at large for the WERWAC.
Thanks, Dennis. And let's go to Cynthia next.
I'm Cynthia Corman. I'm a council person in Mountain Lakes. I'm not I was the liaison for WERWAC for a couple of years, and then for 2021, I'm not, but our liaison couldn't make this meeting. And so we have one of my fellow council members is doing, looking into water. And so I told him that I would participate in this event so as to be able to brief him as he, considers water issues related to our town.
Always wonderful to see you, Cynthia.
Thank you.
And next, our American Gothic, we have Tom and Penny Jones over there at the bottom.
Actually, I'm on the top next to you, Larry. I don't know,
Okay.
and I can't get everybody's picture, so I don't know what's going on. But anyway,
I'm next to her.
Tom Jones is indeed of Welsh heritage. He can sing almost as well as the famous Tom Jones. So if someone composes or creates a song about the Whippany River watershed, I know he would be willing to go on stage and sing for you. And I am his significant other. My stage name is Glinda Garbage, and I worked for the Morris County MUA for 29 years. And I'm a tree hugger, and I'm very distressed because I see so many people in the supermarkets with vast quantities of bottled water. I do not understand. I do not get it. We have drunk water here in Morris Plains now for what, 47 years practically.
And look at us.
Yeah, look. Yeah, well, maybe we. but at any rate, we're just interested in learning about the water in the Whippany River and elsewhere in our area.
Thank you, Penny. I'm going to bring it to Sophia next.
I can't see her.
Hi, Larry. Thank you. Sophia.
Sophia.
I am the principal engineer at Southeast Morris County MUA, and my other job is I'm currently the chair of the AWWA New Jersey section.
All right, welcome. Okay, Art Duffy.
Hello, it's Robert Duffy, the Assistant to the Director of Public Works in the Borough of Madison.
Welcome, Robert. Okay, I see Laura Cummings also.
Yes, I'm going to try my video. Oh, didn't work. Hi, Laura Cummings. I'm the Executive Director of Southeast Morris County MUA, the sister organization of the shorter named authority. So one is I'm really happy to see that we have an audience tonight. People are interested in this topic. I'm really proud of Drew and Claire, because these are the people that are working very hard behind the scenes, taking care of all of our water quality compliance programs and operations. What I'd like to emphasize, one is, if you see the slide that's up, we have rebranded. We have a new logo, and the logo now has a wave in the background, because our name doesn't say anything about water, and that's part of trying to emphasize that that's what we're about. The other thing I'd like to bring to everybody's attention is in the upper right-hand corner, as part of our rebranding effort, we came up with a tagline, your community, your water, and we're dedicated to providing high quality water and a reliable service. And I think that's what's really important about presentations that we're doing here. And, we're trying to make a big effort to do outreach in other avenues throughout our community. We're running the water system, we're managing it, but it's the community's water. And we want to be transparent with our findings. Water quality these days is extremely complicated and everything's a moving target. But everybody deserves to understand, what the data is telling us and what direction we're going. So I'm going to leave it at that. We can always come back and talk about any other topics that people are interested in, and there is a lot to talk about. So thanks again for Allison for inviting us to speak tonight.
No, thank you, Laura. And finally, I have someone on the telephone with 9087 as their extension.
That's Southeast Morris County MUA.
Okay, and
All
okay.
day.
So I think that's the whole crew here besides Drew Saskowitz, who I guess I will introduce and hand over the Are we set, Allison?
Yeah, thanks, Larry. I'll just
Okay.
introduce Drew and Claire. Claire Perugini, I hope I'm saying your name right, is a water quality supervisor with the Southeast Morris County MUA. She has worked at the authority for over 3 years. Prior to working at the SMC MUA, she graduated with a Bachelor of Environmental Science from Ramapo College and worked at 2 different national environmental laboratories for 5 years. following that graduation. So welcome, Claire, and we look forward to hearing from you. And then we also have Drew Saskowitz with us this evening. He's a water quality superintendent with the SMCMUA. He's worked at the authority for over 8 years. He is a licensed operator of record for the water treatment system. Prior to working at the authority, he worked at the Passaic Valley Water Commission for 7 years. So welcome, and we look forward to your presentation with WRWAC this evening.
Thank you for the introduction. Good evening, everyone. I'd just like to thank you all for attending the presentation, and a special thank you to the Whippany River Watershed Action Committee for giving us the opportunity to speak to you tonight about our compliance with the lead and copper rule and some recent revisions to the rule in New Jersey legislation. So the main goals of the presentation this evening are for Claire and I to give you a basic understanding of the complexities of our system. We're going to review our lead and copper compliance data, give you an understanding of the level of effort that goes into our monitoring programs at the authority here, and review our proactive approach for optimizing corrosion control and water quality throughout the system. Claire is going to review some of the new New Jersey legislation and the revised lead and copper rule. And lastly, we're going to go over some methods that you can take within your own home to reduce your exposure to lead at home. So Southeast Morris County Municipal Utilities Authority, or the Authority for short, was formed in 1977. The creating municipalities are the town of Morristown, the township of Morris, the township of Hanover, and the borough of Morris Plains. Water is also provided to some customers outside of the district in the townships of Mendham, Chatham, Harding, Randolph, Parsippany Troy Hills, and Florham Park. The SMCMUA provides drinking water to approximately 62,000 customers a day, and is the largest water purveyor in Morris County. In Morris County. We have an average daily production of about 8 million gallons, with peak production going up to about 16 million gallons per day. The map of our system on the right-hand side, we cover 60 square miles and have over 380 miles of water main in our system. The system is divided into 8 hydraulic gradients ranging from 423 feet above sea elevation on the eastern side of our system to 1,000 feet above sea level in the northwest corner of our system. We have 6 different booster stations and 4 letdown stations that move water throughout from one gradient into another throughout the system. We have 15 storage tanks that are spread out throughout our system. The authority owns and operates 9 different groundwater treatment facilities and 1 surface water treatment plant, as well as purchases water from a couple different utilities, one of which, Morris County MUA, has a groundwater source, and the other being a surface water supply that can be either or a blend of the two, water treated at Passaic Valley Water Commission or North Jersey District Water Supply. So the authority has a very extensive and comprehensive monitoring plan. There are daily, weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, quarterly, and annual requirements that the authority must meet, and routinely collects more samples than are even required. Throughout the course of a year, we collect about 6,400 samples from the raw water and throughout the treatment processes at each treatment facility. Some of these samples include things like free chlorine, iron, total manganese, total coliforms, volatile organic contaminants, perfluorinated compounds, 1,4-dioxane, inorganics. specifically for the lead and copper rule would be pH, orthophosphate, and lead. Collect an additional about 700 samples a year in our Clyde Potts Reservoir alone, which is the source water for our surface water treatment plant. Collect another 4,000 samples a year throughout the distribution system. Those samples specifically for the lead and copper rule would include biweekly samples for pH and orthophosphate, which the authority actually samples on a weekly basis. There are quarterly requirements for alkalinity, conductivity, pH, orthophosphate, chloride, and sulfate that we actually collect bi-monthly, in addition to the annual requirements for lead and copper themselves. The authority also has continuous water quality analyzers set up at our treatment facilities and booster stations throughout the distribution system. We currently have 17 continuous pH analyzers with plans to add 5 more in the future. We have 18 continuous chlorine analyzers with plans to add another 6. We also plan to construct a couple of mobile water quality trailers that will be able to monitor pH, chlorine, and turbidity with the thought to bring those trailers to specific areas of interest throughout our system and plant them there for a couple of weeks or a month, as long as we would like to. So this is our lead and copper data going back to the inception of the lead and copper rule. Lead and copper compliance is actually based upon what's called the 90th percentile. What that means is 90% of the samples collected during each monitoring period must be below the action limit for both lead and copper. The action limit for lead is 0.015 parts per million, and the action limit for copper is 1.3 parts per million. The graph on the left-hand side is our lead data. The graph on the right is our copper data. The red horizontal lines depict the prospective action limit for each of those contaminants. The authority has had a long-standing history of compliance with the lead and copper rule. We've been in compliance for the last 16 monitoring periods. And as such, we were on a reduced monitoring schedule, which comprised of 30 samples collected every 3 years. In 2017, the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection required all large water utilities to go back to standard monitoring, which meant we had to collect 60 samples twice throughout the year. One monitoring period had to be collected between January and June, and the second had to be collected between July and December. Since the authority was in compliance in 2017, we've been placed back into a reduced monitoring schedule, which now means 30 samples every year. Although we've had a long-standing history of compliance with the rules, Southeast Morris County has a very proactive approach towards reducing lead and copper and optimizing water quality. We have currently this year began our water quality system improvement project, where we're adding corrosion control treatment to all points of entry into the distribution system. Throughout the course of the next couple of years, we're estimating to spend $2 million on facility upgrades for that, and thereafter it will incur a cost of $100,000 a year just on the chemicals that we're adding for corrosion control. We also have a water system improvement project where we're estimating to spend between $2.5 and $3 million annually on main replacements throughout our system, and an additional $800,000 a year for the next 10 years replacing service lines, which Claire will talk a little bit more about later. So the authority has 2 well facilities and 1 surface water treatment plant that we own that we currently treat for corrosion control. The purchased water supply that has a surface water source that we get from Passaic Valley Water Commission is also treated for corrosion control with an orthophosphate. The remaining groundwater sources, including the purchase supply from Morris County MUA, are in the process of being upgraded with corrosion control treatment. The goal is to provide a consistent level of orthophosphate regardless of the source water mix, which can vary depending upon system demand, which particular sources are in service or out of service for routine maintenance or seasonal variation. The pictures on the right-hand side depict how orthophosphate will form a protective coating within the pipes to prevent corrosion and lead from leaching into the water. So pH also plays a important role in corrosion rates. The recommended limits for drinking water in New Jersey range between 6.5 and 8.5. Last year, the authority pH levels from the point of entry into the system ranged from 6.3 to 8.4. One of the authority's groundwater sources routinely has a pH between 6.3 and 6.5 and is the main contributing factor to some of the more elevated copper results that are observed annually. So the planned corrosion control treatment upgrades will include pH adjustment at that facility to maintain a pH of 7.5 entering the distribution system. And our Clyde Potts water reservoir also experiences some seasonal variations ranging between 6.3 to 7.5. So the corrosion control treatment upgrades are going to be added to the surface water treatment plant so that we can maintain a more consistent pH range of 7.5, where you can see on this graph where you have optimal corrosion control in between the ranges of 7 to 7.5. The water system improvement project aims to replace approximately 1.5 miles of main annually. This picture actually depicts the project area for this year, which is actually going to extend into next year due to the complexities of working in the highly densely business districts in Morristown along South Street and Washington Street. The scope of the project also includes the replacement of fire hydrants, service lines, and water meters. Okay, so for reference, this is a diagram of a typical water service. The authority owns and operates the water main and the portion of the service line up to and including the curb stop. The homeowner owns the portion of the service line from the curb stop up to and throughout the home, with the exception of the water meter, which is owned by the authority. Depending upon the year of construction, the service line itself and the gooseneck may be constructed of lead or galvanized iron dipped in zinc, which can contribute to as a source of lead in the drinking water. Premises located within the scope of the water supply improvement project are having meters relocated from within the home out to the right-of-way. This will give us the ability to work on or replace the meters without requiring entrance into the premise. In cases where lead or galvanized service lines are encountered, owners are given the option to have full service line replacements if they are willing to share in the cost of their portion at the reduced rate for over a deferred 5-year time frame. And at this point, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Claire.
Okay, so as a public community water system, we follow the regulations of the Safe Drinking Water Act that was signed into law in 1974 by the EPA. Within this act, there are additional acts and rules that regulate lead in drinking water, one being the Reduction of Lead in Drinking Water Act. This act revised the Safe Drinking Water Act definition of lead-free in pipes, fittings, and fixtures that come in contact with potable water, changing it from 8% to be considered lead-free now to 0.25%. So that significantly lowered what the definition of lead-free is. The revision was effective October 1st of 2020, and the compliance deadline is September 1st of 2023. This will require manufacturers and importers of commerce to meet this new lead-free standard. Next, we'll get into the lead and copper rule. It was first signed into law in 1991. Since then, there have been various revisions, with the most recent revision going into effect December 16th of this year. It's currently still open for public comment, so there's a slight chance that there may be some additional revisions until that deadline of December 16th. But water systems then have until October 16th of 2024 to come in compliance with the new revisions. This allows water systems to plan and budget for these changes in regulations. So when determining the proposed revisions, the EPA took a proactive and holistic approach by focusing on 6 key areas. They focused on strengthening drinking water treatment requirements, increasing sampling reliability, improving risk communication, protecting children in schools and child care facilities, identifying the areas most impacted, and replacing lead service lines. So now I'll go into each of those key areas and the revisions that kind of highlight that. So the first, strengthening drinking water treatment requirements. As Drew mentioned earlier, we're regulated on a 90th percentile action level of 0.015 parts per million for lead. That was established in the current rule. The revised rule now establishes a new trigger level of 10 parts per 0.01 parts per million for lead. So if a water system exceeds this trigger level, then they must re-optimize their corrosion control treatment, or if not currently treating, they would be required to perform a corrosion control study. This trigger level is designed to compel water systems to take a more progressive approach to reducing lead levels in drinking water. The next is increasing sampling reliability. The current rule gives the highest priority to collecting samples from homes with copper pipes and lead solder built after 1982, but before 1987, when the lead ban came into effect in the state. The revised rule requires water systems to follow new and improved sampling procedures and will adjust sampling sites to better target locations with lead service lines. The next is improving risk communication. The current rule requires water systems to provide educational materials on lead in their annual consumer confidence report. Also, they must provide further educational material to customers if the action level is exceeded. The revised rule requires additional information to be added to the consumer confidence report about the water system's lead service line removal plan, and also requires water systems to improve public access to lead service line data. The next is protecting children in schools and child care facilities. The current rule does not include separate lead testing at schools and child care facilities, but the revised rule requires water systems to collect lead samples at 20% of elementary schools and child care facilities within their system each year, and to also conduct additional sampling upon request. Although not regulated on a national level, New Jersey Board of Education requires lead testing to be performed triannually, but this falls to the school's responsibility and not the water system. And then lastly, identifying the areas most impacted and replacing lead service lines. The current rule requires water systems that are exceeding the 90th percentile action level to replace 7% of their lead service lines annually. If and when the water system is no longer exceeding the 90th percentile for 2 consecutive monitoring periods, then they can cease the annual 7% replacements. But the revised rule requires water systems to provide water pitchers and cartridges following a lead service line replacement, and must offer to collect the lead sample 3 to 6 months following the replacement. And then the red section here highlights what is being done on a national level by the EPA, but is different in New Jersey. On a national level, the revised rule requires replacement of galvanized service lines that were ever downstream of a lead service line, and the annual rate for lead service line removal will be determined based on the number of lead and galvanized service lines in the water system. But in New Jersey, earlier this year, Governor Murphy signed into law more stringent lead requirements in New Jersey, saying that water systems are now required to inventory and replace all lead service lines by 2031. This legislation also changes the definition of lead service line to include all water supply connections consisting of lead and considers galvanized service lines as lead service lines, where the EPA only considers them as lead if they were ever downstream of lead. It is also anticipated that the DEP will release their revisions to lead and copper rule for public comment in January of 22. The NJDEP regulates on a state level and typically will make regulations tougher than what is required on the federal level. So that's anticipated to come up in 22. So this summary just touched upon the many revisions that are coming down the pike, but overall it's going to be a major undertaking for all New Jersey water systems. So we're going to end the presentation on what you as a consumer can do to be proactive to help reduce lead in your drinking water as well. You can get your water tested for lead. You could do this by contacting your water utility, whether it be SMCMUA or a different utility or even a private lab. There's a few in the area. You can reach out to your water utility and see if your home has a lead service line. Before drinking, you should always flush your cold water tap for a few minutes until the temperature reaches a steady, cool temperature. This helps to just bring fresh water into your home. You can learn about any construction in your area that may disturb your lead service line. Only use cold water for drinking, cooking, and making baby formula, since hot water can dissolve lead more quickly than cold water. Clean your aerators regularly. This traps particles and debris over time. If you're using a filter for lead, make sure that it is certified to remove lead. So you would look for an NSF 53 certified filter when purchasing. And lastly, if you're replacing any plumbing fixtures in your home that come in contact with potable water, ensure that they are NSF certified. This meets the new lead-free certification of 0.25%. And if you want more information, feel free to go to our website. And now we'll open the floor for any questions.
I have a question, if I could.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned it was a lot of information, so forgive me if I get this wrong. I think you mentioned that there's an increased requirement for schools and childcare facilities. Is that the responsibility of a town's, and I'm asking this with my council person hat on, is that a responsibility of a town's health officer or DPW? So in our town, our water utility is internal to the town. And the DPW.
It is the responsibility of the water utility. So whoever's providing water to the elementary schools or child care facilities has to sample.
And is that a change? That's a changed requirement effective a certain time?
Yes, that is a new requirement under the revised lead and copper rule. Previously, utilities were only required to collect from tier 1 homes, or it would move down the list as tier 2, tier 3, depending upon what homes were available within your neighborhood or your system, but it was never a requirement to collect samples at educational facilities.
And did I catch that that's supposed to happen as of January of 2023?
Yes, pending any of the final revisions to the rule. Once the revised lead and copper rule becomes effective, all water systems will be required to sample at educational facilities.
Okay, thank you.
I have a couple of questions. Number one, if you wanted to have water tested, in your house, could we just bring it to SMCMUA to a sample there? Is there a fee for it, or?
So what the SMCMUA is currently doing, if you want to have your water sampled, you call us.
Okay.
We'll discuss with you how many samples you want to have collected, because lead is a very site-specific contaminant. You can have lead present at one faucet in your home and not at another, depending upon the construction materials of even within the home or the faucet itself.
Okay.
So some customers choose to do multiple faucets, whatever water they're using to drink. Some just choose really to do their kitchen faucet where the majority of their water that they're using for cooking and drinking is coming from. So you call and you set that up, and we drop off the sample bottles to you, along with instructions on how to collect the sample, because for lead and copper, what's really important is that you get what's called a first draw sample.
Right.
The water has to remain unused within your entire home for 6 hours before you collect that sample.
Yeah, I understand. I've done it before. It
Right.
worked.
So once you've collected the sample, then yeah, you would drop it off at our headquarters facility, and we charge you what we pay to have the sample analyzed. Which I
You know what it is?
Yeah, $18.
per sample.
How much?
$18 per sample.
Okay, I got you. All right. The other thing is, are you involved with PFAS at all?
Yes, so we do collect samples for perfluorinated compounds as required on a quarterly basis. We are right now in compliance. We do have one facility where PFOA is actually pretty close to the maximum contaminant limit for PFOA. We are actually in the process right now of debating whether or not treatment should be added, or perhaps even that well be abandoned.
Okay. What percentage of our water comes from Passaic Valley versus our own wells?
So I would say on an average day, probably about 20 to 25% comes from Passaic Valley, whereas maybe 50 to 60% comes from the wells.
Okay. All right. Now,
Just follow up on that, Dennis, quickly. Just for clarification, it's Larry. The wells that it comes from, Drew, could you just give us an idea for the people in the audience where those are located in our community?
Sure. There are 4 facilities located in the borough of Morris Plains. There is one in the town of Morristown, and the rest are in Morris Township.
Mhm. So those are the wells where you pump the water out, and as we're alluding to before, that's mixed with some water from the Passaic River that's pumped out from the eastern part of the state.
so the water that's from Passaic Valley, where is it mixed? Or I live in Whippany. Are we getting a mixture, or we're getting Passaic Valley water?
Yes, in Whippany, depending upon where exactly in Whippany, you can receive predominantly water from Passaic Valley. You could receive a blend of that water along with 2 of our other wells, or you could receive predominantly the water from those 2 wells. So it depends upon where exactly in Whippany you live.
Okay.
If you're on the eastern side, more towards East Hanover, then I would say you're getting more Passaic Valley water.
I'm getting Passaic Valley. I'm sure of that. Okay. The testing for PFAS, that's done by the outside lab?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Because
we collect the samples in-house, and they actually get shipped out to Indiana where they're analyzed.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay, because right now, with the sewer authority, they're looking at, the EPA is looking at rules on for us that we have to be looking at PFAS also. it's not finalized, but it's in the works.
Yeah, those samples can be a little bit pricey. They're,
Right. Because because the detection level is very low.
it's parts per trillion.
Yeah.
So the equivalent of a 1 part per trillion would be 1 drop in 20 Olympic-sized swimming pools.
Right.
So, yeah.
All right.
Penny, I see you raising your hand.
Yes, much of this was Greek to me because I don't have a scientific bone in my body. However, I've read a lot about lead and the dangers of lead, and of course, in wherever it was in Michigan and in Newark, New Jersey. What about copper? What is the problem with copper? What happens to us if we have, I assume, too much copper in our water? What are the effects of that on the human body?
I believe the main effect is on your gastrointestinal system, but that I would defer to your healthcare provider, really.
Okay, and have we ever had problems in Morris County with, or has the SMC MUA had problems with too much copper, finding too much copper in the water in our area?
So
Or has that
I
not
can
been a
tell you-
problem?
Well, the last 16 monitoring events, we've been in compliance, meaning we're below that maximum contaminant limit, or the action level, I'm sorry. But there are areas around one well in particular where it's not uncommon to have results that do exceed that action level. And we are in the process of adding the corrosion control to that well right now. And I would say by early 2022, the upgrades at that facility should be complete, where the pH control that is added should bring down the levels of copper that are currently observed around that well.
Okay, and our house was built in around 1958. We've never had our water tested. Do you think it would be a wise idea for us to do that? Because I know nothing about the metal pipes that come into our house.
Sure, yeah. If you live within our service area, you can give me a call tomorrow and I'll set up an appointment. Because the first step of having your water tested within your home is to have one of us come out and check the materials that are within your home to determine what those materials are and if lead solder is present or not, because we're required to report all results to the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. So
thank you.
If you're interested and you live in the service area, give me a call tomorrow and we'll set something up.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question that's not related to lead or copper. One of my pet peeves is people watering, they have the sprinklers and they're watering their sidewalks and they're watering it during the rains, when it's raining and whatever. First of all, is there any problem with the amount of water that we have available? Does the authority do anything to educate or to mandate water conservation? I'll leave it an open-ended question.
So I would say in our area of the country, we're pretty fortunate where it's rare that we have these drought situations.
Yeah, but I think didn't East Hanover go into a water ration? A water, conservation a couple of years ago.
May have, I'm not sure.
I remember one of the local areas did.
You might be thinking of us a couple of years ago. We had a water supply emergency event where we had failure at a couple of our larger well facilities, and the purchased water supply from Snake Valley Water Commission needed to be shut down for a period because of a main break that needed to be repaired on their end. So there was a period of, I want to say about 1 day, where we asked consumers to try to limit the amount of water they were using for that 1 day.
Okay, so you have no, you don't have any intention of, going, educating people on water conservation, et cetera?
Drew, can I interject here? This is Laura. We have, we're actually a partner with, for EPA has a WaterSense program, which is geared toward the community outreach and water conservation. We've been a partner for a number of years. It's a program that we haven't been able to fully launch and engage our community in, but it is on our list. If you go on our website, we usually have a running, there's like almost like an ad from that program that pops up routinely with different tips. So it's on the agenda.
Yeah, it's just a pet peeve of mine. It's just it's very annoying. I don't water my grass or anything. It's going to die. It'll come back. But it's just very frustrating when you're walking down the street and you see people, they have their automatic sprinklers on and everything is pointed towards the sidewalk or the street instead of their own grass. So.
Right. And they will pay more for that water because when you get into your higher tiers within our rate structure, the costs for those irrigation uses are much higher than the consumption rate, the base consumption rate.
But in most cases, they don't care about the slight increase in dollars, though.
Yeah.
But that's okay.
Penny. Yeah,
part of that too, though, just as a comment, is that we do see a natural decline on the basic consumptions just due to the inherent changes in the plumbing fixtures for the low flow fixtures and things like that. So in a general sense, we're seeing a natural decline imposed as people upgrade their bathrooms and kitchens and dishwashers and things like that.
Penny.
I share Dennis's concern, and Laura, I'm glad to hear that you're working with, I don't know if you said EPA, but that there's something on your website. But I believe that the lowest utility bill I know, I pay the bills. Our lowest utility bill is for water, and it's pitifully, we don't pay much at all. I'm shocked at how little it costs us. And I think we as a society need to become aware of the big picture, not just Morris County or East Hanover or Mountain Lakes. But if you read recently about, I know this was in, there's a big article, I think in the New York Times Magazine about the Colorado River and what's happening there. And that river supplies water for a bazillion people, and the water is not, it's disappearing. And I think this is happening in many places on the planet. What will happen in the future, how those places which are becoming, have so little water or be almost arid, what's going to happen? Will there be systems in place for people such as we are, who have an abundance of water, to send it there? But I just think overall, people don't think water does not cost very much. And I am horrified. As I know I don't live in a McMansion, but there are plenty of those in Morris County. And quite frankly, the people who live in those homes have lots of money. And I'm sure since water bills are so low compared to what the other utility bills are, I don't know that they care that much about conservation. And I don't know, it really bothers me.
Can I ask a question unrelated to water and lead? Not to Penny, I don't want to cut you off. Are you looking for some discussion, or I have a totally different question?
No, Cynthia, you go ahead.
Okay. So I have a question that is totally unrelated to lead and copper. And so if there's no information available from the folks on this call, no worries. But when it comes to microplastics, I'm wondering if the the water testing, current water testing standards test for microplastics. And if they do, I'm wondering if there are treatment methods that the utility uses to control for microplastics, or if it's really something that's kind of a problem that hasn't been addressed.
So I can tell you, as of right now, there are no standards set for microplastics, nor any requirements for us to monitor for them. To date, the authority has not done any sampling for microplastics.
And when we talk about PFOAs, is that microplastics or is that something different?
No, that's something different. Perfluorinated compounds are man-made chemicals widely used for like non-stick coatings, waterproof coatings, firefighting, things of that nature.
Thank you. For what it's worth, I've been reading material that says microplastics, because they are endocrine disruptors, they're a real problem when it comes to things like fertility. But again, I'm not a scientist, so I don't know if there's validity to those sort of things, but it's interesting to know that there are no sampling standards right now. So thank you.
Any other questions? That was very interesting. So I do appreciate it, everyone from the Southeast. And as I think Cynthia was asking, we are recording this. So we will be posting a copy of this presentation on our WERWAC website, werwac.org, WRWAC.org, in the near future. So other people can enjoy this information. Kathy, I see you have a question.
Yes, I'm sorry, a delayed question. I was just wondering, is there anything as a resident and a consumer that we can do to reduce any PFAS chemicals from, newly being entered into the system? Is it a residential issue, or is it more of a commercial source issue?
I believe it's more of a commercial source issue, but perfluorinated compounds are everywhere. They're on your Teflon pans, they're on your wrappers, on your fast food containers, they're in your makeup and sunscreen products, they're in your raincoats, they're everywhere. So I don't think as a resident there's much you can really do to limit the contribution of perfluorinated compounds. I think it's more of an industrial contaminant.
Or maybe is it something that, can we eliminate them? Can we have legislation against them, or are we don't have a replacement for them?
Don't know that there is a replacement for them. I don't really have the answer for that. I don't know.
And I've heard something too that maybe you can regulate like a certain type of PFAS chemical and get it out of the system, but then maybe the chemical industry can just come up with another molecule that's different, and then you would need to regulate that. And I'm not sure if I'm confusing that issue with something else, but it sounds like a serious problem with these chemicals that once they get into the drinking system, they're hard to deal with.
Yeah, they're very persistent. They are very hard to remove. And they're widespread. Perfluorinated compounds are even found in the blood serum of polar bears in Antarctica. So it's everywhere.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any other questions?
Larry, I have one more.
Oh, Penny, please. That's what we're here for.
Sorry, I'm sorry. But when Cynthia mentioned microplastics, as far as I know from my reading, that's a huge issue. So I'm just, even though they're microplastics, whose job, Drew or Claire, is it to set the standards related to microplastics? And is this something that we as individuals should be attempting to get legislation with regard to, or what? Would EPA be responsible, or who?
I think initially it would come from the EPA, and then later it would follow that states would come up with their own more stringent regulations. I wouldn't be surprised if in the near future microplastics turn up on what's called the unregulated contaminant monitoring list. So every 5 years, the EPA comes out with a list of 30 chemicals that are currently unregulated but suspected to have or be of health concern. And then water utilities across the country are required to sample for those contaminants to determine their occurrence and concentrations throughout the country. And then that will then trigger, if it is a widespread occurrence, then the EPA steps in and they'll create their regulations. If it's not necessarily widespread throughout the country, then it's more on the local state departments to enforce their own individual maximum contaminant limits.
Thank you.
And am I live or am I mute?
You're live.
You're live.
I'm live. Okay, I got a question that is maybe relevant, maybe not. I like the discussion on PFAS, but the TV commercial channels are replete with ads for a 1995 copper coating on their pans that make it non-slip. Is this the same stuff that used to be called Teflon? Or is it another kind of a product? I just don't know what this red color fry pan is, how it's different from the old-fashioned fry pans that were non-stick made with Teflon.
I don't know if I can answer that for you, Don. I think maybe you'd have to look at the manufacturer of the pan and see if they have a Teflon coating on it or not. I don't know for sure.
Okay, I thought the color gave it away, but I'm not sure because
I thought
are
they claimed they were not coated and it was done through some sort of physical characterization of that metal, that it had little dimples or something that caused it to be non-stick. But I'm not selling a Ginsu knife here, so I don't want to be.
Thanks for the trial anyway. Appreciate it. And thanks for the information on lead and copper.
Actually, I guess I have one last question on the lead and copper. Just in our community, are there certain areas that you're targeting because they're older pipes, say Morristown, versus it doesn't matter as much and you're not targeting the newly developed areas of your water area for the replacement of pipes? And is there a time frame that helps you target certain pipes for replacement or not?
I think what you're referring to, Larry, is for the water supply improvement program.
Yes.
And what we do there is we have spreadsheets that look at the occurrence of main breaks and areas that have higher rates of main breaks are being targeted initially.
Okay, so it's not related to age
it doesn't
or.
necessarily mean No, it doesn't necessarily always correlate to age. After World War II, the iron that they were using at that time seems to not be of the same quality as prior to that, during that time period. So actually, some of the older pipes are in better shape than the mains that were installed around that time period. So it doesn't necessarily correlate exactly to age. I know age does factor into that spreadsheet. We try to keep all of our mains. We're part of that water supply improvement program is to renew all of our water mains on a 150-year life cycle.
Wow. And it's a lot of mains you guys have also. So
A lot of mains.
it's a lot of work, a lot of work. I appreciate that. Okay, with that, going once, going twice. Okay.